Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some PathOfExile discussion. Patch 3.20 added additional Atlas passive support to all of the mechanics that you can block on the Atlas. So this includes things like Expedition, Breach, and the like, and I'm going through each of those mechanics and discussing the nodes you should take, the nodes you shouldn't take, and why. Today's video is going to be looking at Legion, and Legion is currently in an excellent spot to farm either the in-map events, or if you've got a lot of character power behind you, this generally takes Headhunter plus a bit more, then you can form a group and farm the Domain of Timeless Conflict and invite other people along who will be there to leech XP. They will get a tremendous amount of XP and they will reward you handsomely for the service. Those are the two main ways people take advantage of Legion these days. This video is going to be focusing on the Atlas support, which means we're going to be talking about the in-map Legion events. Now, some of your wealth from Legion will come from emblems, but it is mostly mixed loot. This will be familiar to those of you that have run heist contracts. You'll find that most of what you get is from currency icons over monsters, or divination card icons over monsters, or various other icons over monsters' heads. And the War Hordes in particular are in an excellent place right now with all of the additional Atlas passive support that Legion got in 3.20. It's also worth noting that Legion generals in maps are in a much worse place at the moment. In fact, they're in a pretty terrible place. The difference between a Polished Legion Scarab and a Gilded Legion Scarab is whether or not you get the generals on it. And as a result, I would recommend that most of the time you're going to farm Legions, you'll be using Polished Legion Scarabs on every map. And even though there are a few chaos, you will definitely find you get that back. Now, the loot that you get from Legion events in maps, it seems like about 60% of it actually comes from the chests, about 35% of it from monster drops, and only 5% or less from boss drops. The last thing that we need to quickly mention before we get into breaking down the clusters is Incubators. These are clunky and awkward at the moment, and I think they should be 10 times rarer and 10 times better and only use one of them at a time. However, they do sort of add up, and you probably want to use them when you've got them. The best ones to use early league are the Geomancer's ones, the ones that grant a 6 link. Later in the league, the best ones are the ones that grant divination card rewards. Whatever the best one is at a given point, you won't be able to sustain just that, so fill in with things like currency incubators and scarab incubators and item level 83 plus fragment incubators, all of which can give reasonable rewards sometimes. I generally speaking pick up incubators that are not complete trash, so talisman ones are complete trash, but a lot of the other ones aren't. Then I sort them out over time, and every few maps I remember, oh yeah, let's go and see what the best incubators I've got are, and put them on all my gear. But they are a bit of a pain. You can also just sell them in bulk if you want. Alright, let's go through the clusters, and we've got some really simple ones here. Most of the Legion support on the tree is pretty simple, but some of it is a little bit more nuanced. Firstly, we have the Monumental cluster. This one's really simple. 22% increased chance to contain a Legion encounter in your map, or 24% if you're using Wandering Path. But let's just get out of the way quickly that I don't recommend using Wandering Path, or Growing Hordes, or Grand Design, or any of the other tree warping keystones in conjunction with Legion, and that's because the Legion passive support large nodes, the notables, are just too good for any of them to be worthwhile, as are Scarabs. Yeah, this cluster's really good, you want to take it, and this is important to note. This will stack with forced legions that are applying because of Scarabs or because of other mechanics like that. So you definitely want this even if you are using a Scarab on every single map that you run, because if you're providing 1 or even 2 Legion encounters on your map from Scarabs, this will provide you a bit of an extra chance to get 1 more than you otherwise would have. Legion is not capped at 1, so take this point no matter what your Legion strategy is going to be. Next we have what I term the East Inner Hexagon. So this has a weird identity in that it does multiple things. It contains multiple nodes that don't really scale up Legion in the same way. Some of these nodes make encounters more lucrative, others make them easier. So let's start with Chain of Command. Legion encounters in your maps contain 2 additional sergeants. These will be tough rare monsters, and they'll have a 20% chance to have one of those reward icons over their head. Now that will also stack with 6% chance to have rewards here, 3% chance for sergeants to have rewards here, and so there's quite a bit of this value here. You're getting a total of 29% chance to have rewards and 2 additional sergeants here. You will already have some sergeants on your Legion encounters. As a result, I do recommend taking Chain of Command. The other side though, Protracted Battle, has Legion encounters in your maps have 40% increased duration. This is objectively a very good thing if your character's not yet super powerful, and if it doesn't yet proliferate kills super well through packs. It is objectively a bad thing if you do already project kills very well through packs. And as a result, it's something you should try out and make up your own mind on. I would advise most people to unspec this, but to start with it to begin with, and then to unspec it when your character's more powerful. You also notice that this causes monsters in your maps to take 50% increased damage while in stasis. This is definitely all upside, and it makes kill proliferation easier, and as a result, some builds will get a lot of value out of this, especially if you have corpse explosion effects that don't typically one-shot entire packs, like Asenath's Gentle Touch. Then you'll find that Protracted Battle will make those considerably better than they otherwise were, and as a result, those builds will definitely want to take this and just leave it on, because it might help them kill the entire pack with one skill. Finally, you've got the option of taking Legion Duration here. Most people will not want to take this point, but it's an option if you need it. The Outer East Hexagon is next. Now this one is interesting in that it provides both additional loot and also quality of life at the same time. So this cluster contains a few Legion chance nodes. No matter your Legion strategy, you want these nodes. But it also contains Emblematic and a little bit more of the same stat. 0.6% chance for Timeless Splinters to drop as Timeless Emblems instead in your maps, and if you take these as well, it's a total of 1%. You definitely should take all three of these. It's a 99% more multiplier to the amount of Timeless Splinters you will get. So if you would have got 1,000 Splinters, then this is going to cause 10 of them to upgrade into full emblems. That's 6 from Emblematic and 2 from each of these nodes. And that means that instead of 1,000 Splinters, you're going to get 10 emblems plus 990 Splinters, which is equivalent to 1,990 Splinters. So that's far better, and Emblematic is thus a really solid pickup. You definitely want to take this whole cluster. Next, we have what I term the Agency cluster. So here you have 5 different options. You can increase the probability of getting Templar Legions, Eternal Legions, Vaal Legions, Karui Legions, and Maraketh Legions. Now, there's been a little bit of recent research on the relative frequency of all of the different factions in 3.20, but it seems to me that the baseline probabilities are of the order a weighting 25 for Eternal Legion, Vaal Legion, or Karui Legion, a weighting of about 9 for the Templar Legion, and a weighting of about 6 for the Maraketh Legion. Taking the points that you see here will increase these closer to each other. Now, the Maraketh Legion ones are worth the most because they are the rarest, but you will also want to pick up the Templar one, because even though this will slightly decrease your chances of getting Maraketh emblems, it is still worth it overall. Finally, Constant Battle is an outstanding node. You definitely want to take this. In Solo Self-Found, though, you might find yourself in a situation where you're chasing a specific timeless jewel. For example, you might be one of the many players who wants to get their hands on a glorious vanity in Solo Self-Found. If that's the situation, you want to take Vaal Legion Chance as well or instead of some of the others, and then you want to run the Domain of Timeless Conflict and focus on killing the Vaal boss as often as possible, because that will give you your maximum probability of getting your glorious vanity timeless jewel. Those things can be quite rare though, and in Solo Self-Found it is a fairly substantial effort in order to chase down a particular timeless jewel. You can target farm the jewel you want in Solo Self-Found, but I would not count on having it before you reach level 95 because they can be quite rare. Next we have the Hat on this Agency cluster, and this contains one excellent node and one very mediocre node. Let's go through Face Off first. This is completely and utterly mediocre. Legion encounters in your maps are 60% more likely to include a general, and you get a little bit more of this stat on the small nodes leading up to it. Then, Legion encounters with one general instead have both generals. Now this sounds fantastic until you realise that the Legion generals just don't drop very much loot at the moment. In fact, I would go as far as to say that you probably want to do this. I don't believe these 3 points merit their cost in terms of the amount of rewards that you get. However, the other side is excellent. You get some Legion chance, then you get some duplication of splinters that are available in your maps, but most importantly, you get war supplies. This causes an additional war horde to spawn with each legion that you fight. Additionally, when you're in the stasis phase, when you destroy a legion chest and therefore make it something that goes out of the stasis phase into the real world, it will also essentially destroy all of the monsters that are within a certain range of this. War supply will quadruple the amount of monsters on average that are woken up by this. It's quadruple because it's doubling the radius, but that ends up quadrupling the area, and typically those monsters are roughly evenly distributed. So war supplies is absolutely fantastic, and you definitely want to take this. It's worth noting that this stacks with Polished Legion Scarabs as well, and that's why I recommend using a Polished Legion Scarab on every map. You'll find that with war supplies, and in particular when we add in Pillaged Treasures over here, that you will end up with a staggeringly large amount of war hordes, and they will drop a lot of loot. War hordes in general just feel like they're a very significant part of the loot that you get in Legion encounters. Finally, we have the cluster I term the Inner Pincers. This is a very mixed bag cluster. All the nodes are worth taking, but some of them are only just. So Pillaged Treasures is outstanding. especially in conjunction with the Polished Scarabs that raise the chance of getting one of the Warhordes up to 100%, and also the War Supplies, which grants an additional Warhorde. So you're going to be looking at 3 total Warhordes, that's 2 on one side, 1 on the other as a minimum. Now, this is going to cause all of them to have an additional reward on them, and that'll be one of those icon rewards. Some of the time this will be currency, which are good. Some of the time it'll be divination cards, which are good. Other times it'll be something that's rubbish, like an Abyss reward, but those are actually at the more uncommon end of the spectrum. The ones that you care about do tend to come up quite a lot. All the small nodes here are fairly solid, granting you additional chance for duplication of splinters that are dropped in your maps. And then you have logistical support. Logistical support is risk and reward in one package, but it's pretty small on both fronts. This is a 38% increase to the amount of rewards that come from monsters, which is significant and is worth taking it for. However, it's worth noting that the Legion monsters in your map gain 50% more life for each reward they have, will sometimes cause you to miss out on rewards because the monster in question is just too tanky for you to break out of stasis. The more powerful your character is, the less of a factor this is, but it is something that you should keep in mind, especially if there's a monster that you're struggling to find until quite late, that logistical support will sometimes cause you to miss out on a reward like a divination card reward that you would have otherwise got. Those times are disappointing, but they are pretty rare, and as a result, I will say logistical support is worth taking. It's just not quite as good as some of the other nodes on the tree. That said, Legion is in a very good place at the moment, especially if you're in a position that you can sit on your Marraketh emblems until you've got about 10 or so of them, then sell them in a bundle. You'll find that you will get more value per emblem if you do that. That's all I got on Legion. May your Varlorbs have interesting results, and I will see you around.